All right. Well, welcome. This is the first of the Compassion Alchemy Meditation Immersion. So this is a course that's going to take place over the next, there are 4 Saturdays, September, October, November, December. Yes, over the next 4 months. And it's going to be a really fun program. You can choose to go as deeply and intensely as you like. My hope is to make information available so that if you wanted to, some of you might be advanced or intermediate meditators, and you could take this information and really kind of go quite deeply with it. And others of you might just want to dip your toes in. You might have seen my little Facebook announcement or something that said, hey, learn to meditate. And you said, well, that sounds good. And my hope is to create a container that will work for all of that. Today in our content, we'll be learning a bit about why going as intensely as possible is not always necessarily the most fun option or the most healthy option, because today's class is all about the earth element, which has to do with grounding, has to do with comfort, has to do with resource. So that's what we're doing. This is a course that has 4 modules. You are signed up for that. You can unsign yourself up on the website at any time. But the nice thing about that Kajabi website is that all of these courses will be archived, as well as from these recordings, I'll break out little recordings of each meditation. So if you want to do your meditations in a guided way, then you'll have me there chit-chatting you through it. Now breathe out. Now breathe in. Don't forget to relax and enjoy your breath out, etc. So that'll be really fun. And I hope that you'll enjoy it. Let's talk a little bit about this system that we'll be working with and the origin of the system. And then, well, first let's do logistics. Now there are enough people here that I probably won't have to repeat them too many times. So the logistics for this course, this is a day-long mini meditation retreat. And so we'll be focused on practice, as well as we'll be doing a bit of instruction and a bit of Q&A. But because it's in kind of this retreatish format, I'd like to place our focus on actually getting a few hours in on the meditation seat together. And hopefully that's not too intimidating for you. It should be quite enjoyable. So we go from 10:30 to 5:30, and we're going to take a 90-minute break for lunch in the middle. I think that was at 1 o'clock. I'll check on our first break, basically to try to make it right smack dab in your middle of the day. So I believe our lunch break is from 1 to 2:30. And so if you need to schedule your life accordingly, then that would be the way to do that. And as well, we'll take 2 probably 15-minute breaks, and those will be right in the middle. So we'll have, what is this? It's like a 3-hour chunk for breakfast, and then a 3-hour chunk for dinner. And then right in the middle at the 1.5-hour mark, we'll have a 15-minute break. So just to let you know, because there are some, I'll try not to diss all of the meditation schools I've been to, but there's some meditation schools where they make it kind of a point of pride to like not take a bathroom break or something like that. I think that's silly, because we are human beings and we have to use the bathroom. But occasionally the meditation will be so wonderful that you'll be like, oh no, should I go now and go pee? Or I'm going to need a snack, my blood sugar. So the plan is, just so you know, like, and then get up anytime you need to. I personally won't be offended, but just in case it's so engaging, I'm telling you the secrets of the evidence-based secular universe. Then there will be a break at, about 1 hour and 15 minutes in, and then there will be a lunch break 3 hours in, and etc. So those are the logistics for the day. The chat box is also open for you. You can ask questions as you go. If you ask questions not in a Q&A period, I might miss them, so you might have to ask them later, but feel free to put them in there. And also, if anything is weird, if I say something that like sounds gender essentialist because I'm a Gen X and I haven't trained it all out or something, like private chat me and be like, bro, you're going to walk that back. Just feel free to send a little private chat in there, and that's fine. Or specifically what may come up, that hopefully that's less likely. But what may come up is I may say something that's not quite trauma informed or something like that, that you think would be dangerous for people to follow that instruction. Please send me a message, private chat me, so that I can maybe say things in a different way that's a little more appropriate. I think those are our logistics for today. Sound good? Sound exciting? Any questions, comments, complaints about that? Okay, groovy. So let's get into the curriculum. This is the first and a half iteration of this particular curriculum, which is part of why this is a big free course that I'm just putting out there to the universe at large. Like, hey, who wants to get into this? Because I developed this system. I've been teaching meditation for quite a lot of years now. I was ordained as a Buddhist priest in 2008 and started sort of officially having a ministry in that regard then, but was trained as a Qigong teacher and a yoga teacher and a meditation teacher for many years before that. Recently, last year, some of the people who joined today will be graduates of my Qigong instructor training program. And in the second level, I really wanted to give people all of the tools that you need to be able to coach someone, and especially coach someone through transformational processes. Have any of you ever been through a transformational process? Does that language mean anything to you, right? You went through a breakup or you got a new kitten or something like that, and all of a sudden your whole life changes, right? Sometimes that will happen when we engage in these spiritual practices. Like one thing we'll talk about today that I really think everybody should know about is there's something called, it sounds really weird, but there's something called relaxation-induced anxiety. Wait, aren't those opposites? Well, yes, but when when one, like myself, when you've constructed a persona that's based on vigilance, you can kind of relax into that persona. But sometimes as you begin to do meditation and you relax more deeply, it uncovers a lot of fear that's underneath. And so things like engaging in meditation can be transformative in ways you didn't expect, right? You thought, oh, wow, I'm just going to do, Dean Ornish says this will be good for my heart, right? I saw it on Oprah in 1998 or something. And the meditation, it's finally time. And then all of a sudden, well, now I'm feeling all of these things. So we need real skills if we are going to help people navigate through transformational processes. And of course, life itself is a big one transformational process after another. So this is the story. This is the history. I will try not to make this too long. Last year, my level 2 Qigong instructors, I put in a whole way too big, actually, coaching and communication and self-development course in the midst of their course of like how to lead people in Taoist moving meditation. And when we got to the retreat at the end, I was in a moment of doing a lot of soul searching myself, and I had explored taking on a job with a company that provided online mental health care for, what did they call it? Let's see, like moderate moderate clinical intensity. So people who are recovering from addiction or things like that, or people who are recovering, young people who are recovering from challenging family situations or things like that. So it's not an inpatient care, but it is kind of, and I was flirting with the idea of being hired as a holistic practitioner for them to teach meditation. That didn't work out. But when I was looking at their curriculum, one of those light bulbs flashed for me because they had set it up in the style of human development, like people, researchers like Piaget and Lovinger and some of these classic human development researchers. And all of a sudden, the light bulb that went off for me was that we don't really have, at least in my view, a good sort of grounded, evidence-based path of spiritual development for adults. At least in the view that I have of the world. We have sort of like, you could go to therapy and they could go, yeah, well, you got these attachment wounds and you're gonna have to journal and squeeze this stress ball. Hopefully they have better techniques than that, but I'm just making a caricature. And then you have this whole other group of like wild biohackers, right? Who are like, oh, just take some ecstasy with your partner. And then you'll go to the ayahuasca thing next month. And then we're doing a drum circle. And we're just kind of like, what could be going on in there? And then we have the spiritual world, right? Meditation and like these time-tested methodologies of working with our heart and our evolution, our consciousness, but they're often couched in such fundamentalist religious language that to get the Buddhist teachings on mindfulness and concentration, for example, you have to sort of spend a bunch of hours like at an altar with religious iconography that you might not believe in. So for me, what I wanted to really offer, what felt really inspiring was, how do we offer very transformative teachings of meditation? So there's a style of meditation that's kind of like a little spa that you can take from your day. Oh, Calgon, take me away. I meditated. That was relaxing. And then everything just kind of goes back to normal. But there's a whole science of how to use meditation to not only change our neurology, but to facilitate growth in our persona, in our individual. Meditation is often about transcending individuality or hyper individuality. But in order to do that, we need to grow and make healthy the individual that we are. And this is one of our first big points for today, is that if you try to skip the steps, if you try to say, okay, well, I'm not going to work on my growth and development, I'm tired of me, I just want to get somewhere else, you'll tend to do this thing that they call spiritual bypassing. I'll put it even in the chat box here, spiritual bypassing. And that might not be such a problem. I mean, it kind of feels good to spiritual bypass. There's a lot that we might want to just bypass here in growing an ego or having to get a job or deal with the other humans on planet Earth. But what can happen is that those unresolved issues that may be living in your tissues, they don't just go away. The unresolved issues in your relationships don't just go away. And so we can get into danger of sort of pasting a spiritual concept over trauma, or even what can be really uncomfortable, and I can tell you this because I've done it myself, we can rebrand our trauma responses as spirituality. And so this is what, I don't know if any of that speaks to you, but this is really inspiring to me as a traditionally trained Buddhist educator, as a traditionally trained yoga teacher, as a traditionally trained master of medical Qigong. What's really inspiring to me is to take a look at how meditation affects our human development, and to develop a system, and basically to offer a system that is sort of a map to the various different facets and flavors of meditation and where they fit on that developmental journey. So just a couple more words and then we'll get into practice. But one of the things that you may notice if you are any of you like longtime seekers, you've been to the New Age bookstore at least 5 times, and so you can meditate on crystals or you can meditate while taking a walk. Okay, so you may know if you say meditation, that means a lot of different things, right? If you want to help me and participate a little bit, type into the chat box, what does meditation mean? What's meditation? In like a 1 to 3 word response. What's meditation? Just as a little experiment. What is meditation? Wait for the responses. I can tell by your hands that some of you are typing. Okay, let's see. So we got connection to source. We got focused attention. We got getting quiet. We got using breath to get into the present moment. We got focused awareness, right? We got calming the mind. I love it. I love it. Okay. Turning within. Beautiful. Letting go. Ooh, that one got me. I'm ready. Let's go. Let's see. How to lovingly chill the F out. Yes, absolutely. All right. So I love this list. And I personally agree with all of these. Being mindful with a wolf, and maybe that's all life, and releasing what isn't needed. Yeah. Being mindful with a wolf. I think that would be an interesting proposition. Okay. So, I love this list. And one of the things that I want to point out is that let's take like connection to source, which is great. I'm digging on that. But if you were to take that and then let's see, where were we? Oh, and you sort of contrast that with using breath to be in the present moment. These are, now for some of you, you might go like, yeah, same thing, the source is in, but for some folks, like if you went to a Vipassana retreat or something like that, connecting with source is off the list because your focus is to be mindful of the sensations of your body. You start out by developing focused attention on the breath, and then you do sweeping meditation through the body, and that's all you do. And similarly in Zen meditation, if you have your interview with the Roshi, and you're like, how was meditation today? Oh, it was really terrible. But then I saw this light and I felt totally connected to source. The Roshi might say, okay, hallucination. Go back, focus on your breath. Don't get distracted with the source. Go focus on your breath. But if you were like out with the desert fathers, chanting to the name of Allah and, doing this thing. And they were like, so how's your connection with God coming? You go, oh, no. I just focused on my breath. Like they might think that something was really wrong with you and you weren't getting the technique, because meditation in these different contexts means something totally different. Similarly, a little blankie for my feet. It's autumn. Oh my gosh, I needed a blanket. This is great. Okay. Similarly, one of the things in here that I really like is like, being lovingly being with what's in the present moment. And we can all kind of agree, probably, like that's one of the big ways that meditation, or now they would probably say mindfulness, right? If you look at Yoga Journal, what meditation is, being lovingly with what's in the present moment. If you want your meditation practice to be trauma informed, you got to know this thing. Blew my mind a few years ago that for some folks, the best meditation, the most calmative meditation, is to not be with what's in the present moment. Because there are times that, and we won't get too terribly serious in this workshop, I hope, but there are people who go to Vipassana retreats and other type of retreats, and they have serious psychological breaks. This is, I want to say, because you might come back and go like, no, that's like the people who commented on my TikToks, and no, you can always be in the present moment. It's a little bit ableist to say that. because there are some folks for whom the present moment is so painful that it's a better idea to focus on images of light, or to focus on thoughts about a more compelling future, or to focus on a regulation technique that your EMDR therapist taught you, than it would be to like hardcore, back to the present moment, back to the present moment, because the present moment material may be so overwhelming that it becomes a trauma trigger itself, just the sensations in your body. So what I wanted to present in sort of we're in a new era of meditation study. We've had enough of it since the 60s that now we've started to research it. And so it's not just couched in religious language, except sometimes even we modern meditators become quite fundamentalist about how we present our meditation. You'll hear Buddhists who say, like, oh no, unless it's in the cultural context of taking refuge and chanting to the Buddha, and it's not meditation. It's like, well, no, there are whole Buddhist schools where you never do that, and they meditate just fine. And then there are other schools who say, like, no, you got to throw away all that cultural context and just do MBSR in the hospital with what's his name, and well, that's not exactly true either, because there are some people for whom that method is not going to work the best. So, long story long, the motivation for this class was I was excited as I looked at this curriculum for this job I was flirting with. I was like, wait a minute, all the different methods of meditation fall into one of the tasks of human development that are in this list. Oh, that's cool. So today we're in the earth element, which is kind of why I'm on about being trauma informed in our meditation, because that's what today is about. Brief overview of these stages, just really quickly, because I'm not sure I remember all of them, and I don't know where my notes are, so we'll do them later too. But the first stage in our life as a human is we need to develop secure attachment. We actually need to develop the capacity to be comfortable as embodied beings. There's not really much debate on this in terms of human development. If you don't develop that as a little baby, you have to go back later and do the work to earn secure attachment for like your inner child. If we try to skip that, and here's where I personally like branded my trauma responses as meditation. I did a rebranding, when I was about 18, and I said, oh, wait, I think the whole world is just totally unsafe. I don't want to be any part of it. I want to have no attachments and relationships. And I went, wow, that sounds a lot like Buddhism. I'll just be a Buddhist. Attachment is bad, blah, blah, blah. And that's not a particularly healthy way to live one's life. Now, I'm not saying that the high philosophical ideas of Buddhist non-attachment are wrong. I'm saying they're developmentally inappropriate for that stage. Does that make sense? Does that sound like I'm talking BS? Or okay, we're kind of vibing, right? Okay, because for me, I was like, whoa, nobody ever said this to me, but that's cool. There are a few authors who have kind of worked with this, but it's new. It's a little bit brand new, which is why I'm doing a free class. Try it out, see if we like it. So the first stage is all about meditation practices that can help with that task of finding comfort in the body, of finding comfort with being in the present moment, of finding that earned secure attachment. So even if, and this is, you can start to use some really classical methods like focusing on Buddhas or beings of light or things like this, because where those come in is, in kind of a secular context, is some of us have never felt what a secure attachment figure feels like in our real life. And so in the olden days, they were like, well, no, just visualize it. That's Jesus. And occasionally in the world, people have successfully used Jesus or the Buddha or the universe to practice what it would feel like to have someone love you unconditionally to the point where your brain starts to rewire itself a little bit. And this can bring a lot of comfort, can bring a lot of groundedness, and traditionally, it forms the foundation for the next stages in meditation. So, without going too deep into it, like in traditional Buddhism, like in tantric Buddhism, where they're doing all this wild stuff that like the people taking the ayahuasca are experiencing too. They're doing it through meditation. You really need to have a comfortable sense of self and sense of embodiment before you do that, or it'll just shred you, right? You'll become less adept at life and love than you were before. And so what they want is they want you to be like, okay, here's how you love yourself and others before you realize that self and others don't exist. And you're just images of light in the cosmic cinema, right? And so personally, without too much personal share, like as a young person, I had some of these realizations, like by singing in church, I had my first Kundalini awakenings with Lord Jesus. And I walked out of there and I was like, oh no, we're all beings of light in a cosmic cinema. I didn't know what the hell to do with that information, man. It really, I'd probably be a lot wealthier right now if I knew what the heck to do with that. Like I could have like held a job throughout my 20s or, but because there's like no attachments and it's all illusions and stuff like that, according to deep meditative experiences people have had across cultures, those are accurate statements. But when they happen at a developmentally inappropriate moment, they make you less adaptive instead of more. Okay, I'm excited now, but is this fun at all? I'm going to shut up real soon, but I just want to like vibe check. Okay, cool. So that's the idea, right? So that's today's earth element. We're going to be doing yoga nidra. Oh, so relaxing. We're going to be doing some stuff that I caught from my minimal training in somatic experiencing and then took it back to its meditative root. So we're going to be doing resourcing practice. And we're just going to be doing these calmative, self-regulating, self-compassionate, groovy things. And then what you should know is that you could go all the way with that. You could make that an entire meditative path, which is pretty neat. But there are other stages. So in this stage, I'll tell you more about the schema of it later. But today is earth element. Next month is the water element. And this is where once you have developed secure attachment, like for a little baby, that means like they're merged with their environment kind of and they're caretakers. And so it means that you feel like all this merger is safe. The next developmental task then is to individuate. And in meditative work, this happens in two parts. It's often called like consolidating a center. And this is where you're both developing the, what do they call, the non-judgmental witness that can stand outside your experiences, as well as finding out like, where are my values? And this is the part of spiritual work where they're all about like, setting up quite a solid identity based on what are the values that I want to express in my actions? What are the values that I want to express in my speech? And we start to own, in a way, what's mine, what's me, what's others. And our work helps us to own our own projections, to recognize how much of the world we are projecting from our own mind, right? Like right now, hopefully none of your projections are too terrible, but I'll probably say some things today, and you might react to them in ways that are all about you and not about me at all. And there are meditative disciplines when we work with those within it, just watching our mind, not identifying with the contents of the mind, but finding a deeper sense of identity that we actually become free from a lot of the triggers of all these projections. And so there's a whole set of meditative disciplines that go with that developmental stage. It's really neat. And this is where you get a lot of the mindfulness and like, oh, your thoughts will come up. and let them pass by. And they don't mean anything. Really cool for that stage. If you were to say that to someone who needed to learn self-compassion, they might just diss themselves. They might go, oh, my thoughts don't mean anything. My emotions don't mean anything. So we really want to discern like, oh, what tool is right for this time? My hope at the end of the 4 months is then that you have this toolbox as you're walking around through life, and then life inevitably hurts. You can go, oh, which tool? Oh, it's this one I'm projecting, or it's this one I need self-compassion. And it'll be really cool. Okay, from there, then in November, we do the fire element, which is, it's all about what they'll often call internal alchemy. And so this is where instead of sitting back and witnessing the thoughts and emotions, instead of just grounding and feeling good, this is where we've developed so much of the capacity to feel good, so much of a capacity to be non-attached that we can relate directly with the potent and wild energies of life, right? And so you'll see this. This is like the type of meditation that you'll get at like the tantric partner retreat or something like that, right? Like, oh, it's gonna be wild and you're gonna fight sometimes and you gotta open your heart to it, and there's suffering in the world, but you gotta open your heart to it, and you're a weirdo, but that's okay, you can open your heart to it, right? Totally cool. If you did it in the developmental phase that we're doing today, that's totally destabilizing, right? And you can find some folks who will make an excuse for all of their shadow projection and like yelling at you and being a jerk, and they'll call that tantric spirituality, when in fact they just have no capacity for self-regulation. I'm not really pointing the finger out there. I've done all this myself, so just hear this as me, but if it's also you, then no, hopefully there are some tools, right? So we want to discern like, oh wow, am I experiencing all the wildness of life from an open heart of love, or have I just not learned to own my projections, right? So, and then in December, we'll do the wind element, which is all about choice and all about developing agency and volition. And this is where a lot of like the creative meditations come in, and the karma yogas, and like enacting compassion into the world. And again, you can see they have this somewhat in classical systems like Buddhism and Taoism, where they'll put this down like, oh, don't try to go out and be a big karma yogi before you've learned how to sit still yet. So it's in there, but here this is kind of like the final stages of individuation in young adult development, where you gain a sense of purpose. You gain a sense of like, what do you want to offer to the world? And so this is where we have a lot of the different creative meditations, a lot of the kind of like envisionment process, and finding this inner sense of agency and choice. Okay. So that, oh, and then the last one that we don't have one on the schedule is the space element. I use classic Buddhist terminology for these because they help me organize my thoughts, but that's where often you get these, they call like the nature of mind teachings, or dwelling in natural ease. And this is where basically the ego dissolves, right? These are the ego dissolution type of meditations. And they have them in Zen, they have them in Dzogchen. And traditionally, these are quite advanced. If you go like my teacher, Pema Khandro Rinpoche, offers teachings on Dzogchen online mostly nowadays, right? And you'll hear her say, because she's a traditional teacher, oh, these are secret teachings. You're supposed to get an initiation and like not tell your friends about them. And from the West, we're often like, that doesn't seem very modern. Like, I went to this whole thing and I can't tell my friends about what I learned about the compassionate nature of the universe. Okay. And it might not make a lot of sense, like it didn't to me for my first like 20 years of Buddhist study. But generally, it's because some of those introductions will totally destabilize a person's psychology, right? It's for a lot of, and in the olden days, they say, it'll either just go over their head and then they'll like diss it. And according to traditional spirituality, like, you should never diss the highest teachings. So don't tell anybody who's not going to get it. But then the people who do get it might be totally blown away and not be able to like go to work the next day or cook dinner for their kids or something like that. And so they were very careful and very secretive about that. And what was the progression? Well, usually they went through the same exact progression. They learned to find comfort and be in the present moment. They learned to take perspective on their own mind. They learned to integrate all of their emotional experiences. They learned to make choices from like a fully integrated self. I mean, best we're going to do, but a moderately integrated self. And then they let the whole thing go into this mystic dissolution. So that's kind of the traditional path. I'm saying it today in Buddhist Taoisty terms, but you can find this in Christian mysticism. You can find this, I studied Sufism for many years. So these are all the dissolutions are all the fana fi Allah, dissolution into Allah. But then way down here, it starts with secure attachment. To be a good Sufi, you have to have a sheikh, you have to have a spiritual mentor with whom you develop a secure attachment relationship. They say the whole path doesn't work without that. And so we have these specific stages where we're doing specific developmental tasks. What I was inspired to offer is a way of organizing our spiritual teachings that we might come into contact with, right? I'll tell you mostly in Buddhist and kind of yogi terms today, but whatever you go out and do, my belief is they all fit into this map, and the map is a secular one. It's all about dopamine and oxytocin and cingulate gyruses and reticular activating systems and stuff like that. And so you can slot them in, and we can begin to do the work of developing a way to move through spiritual stages, right? To move toward those dissolution of our ego that carry with them bliss and like transcendent wonder that I think we're all seeking, but in a way that doesn't remove us from the world where we can be kind, where we can be successful, where we can be healthy, where we can be strong, where we can be change makers, but actually infuses the power of that transcendent bliss into our change-making activities, into our close relationships, and into our relationship with ourselves. Woohoo! Okay, so that was a lot of blah, 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 but that's the intro. Whew, I got the whole course intro done. Let's take a few minutes and maybe just talk back or question or rebuttal or something, and then we'll take a break and we'll come back and we'll introduce some practices. While you're finding out if you have something to say, I will read, from the chat box, this question. Yes, gurus as secure attachment figures. And that is my current take on guru yoga. So there are different kinds of guru yoga classically. Some are more about the nature of mind is the ultimate guru. But the ones you'll hear about are, you have to relate to like a flesh and blood person. And my personal experience of that and my research seems to show that the reason for that is you need a secure attachment figure. How a guru is defined classically is that it's someone who loves you unconditionally. They're totally dedicated to your growth and thriving. Now, those can be hard to come by. Let's be honest, right? So that's why they're like, well, good luck finding a guru. But if you found one of those, like I found that in my Sifu who passed in 2019, and I didn't get it for a lot of years. And then, just a couple years before he passed, I was like, whoa, this guy's the ultimate grandpa. And he just wants me to thrive. He just cares. What the hell? Because it was freaking revolutionary to me, man. And something about that like changed my whole course of spiritual development. Like the way I love others, the way I walk on planet Earth was changed by the fact that like I saw in person somebody who just gave a damn all the time. It was pretty neat. So yeah, I think that the guru yoga, it has other aspects, but in this map, a lot of that is about having a secure attachment figure. And the good news is that works just as well with like a visualized figure, or, you know, remembering a grandma, or having a really cute doggy who loves you unconditionally. Those all help fill that same spot. Cool. Any other questions or rebuttals or confirmations that you want to share at this time? How are we doing? Good? Just chilling? All right, cool. If you do have a rebuttal or confirmation, feel free to send me an email or put them in the chat box of your course page, etc. Let
I
us.
actually have something.
Oh yeah, go for it.
I just so I've been meditating, doing all the stuff for like 20 years and having all sorts of, all sorts of experiences and being like, oh, I've dipped in, but I can't like maintain it, right? I can't maintain whatever I experience, or embody like what I've experienced. And I feel like it really isn't until recently, like my mom died 5 years ago, and it really was like me trying to find that secure attachment again. And like, yeah, basically that, finding that secure attachment. And so it's interesting to me that I feel like I've leveled out. Um, and I feel like all of these things that I would like did tap into before, like they're all of a sudden it feels like they're embodied after I found the secure attachment. So I'm like, oh, that makes sense why all this time I'm like, why isn't this working? I'm putting in so much work. It's because I didn't have that kind of base level thing that I needed to kind of build on top of. So yeah, confirmation.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? And it's so cool, you know, like there's a couple principles in there that sing to me, which are like, one is, if we think of our spiritual work kind of, you know, we want to be careful not to think of it too like therapeutically. It's not a replacement for therapy, but if we think of them kind of as like nutrients or therapeutic interventions or something like that, a lot of what we do sometimes is like, we have an ankle injury, metaphorically, that we should go to PT for, but we're just going to the gym and working out. Like that's what a lot of, in my own practice, and what a lot of people I have coached and seen on the scene out there are doing spiritually, is we're like, and then we're like, oh, why do I always hurt? You know, and then, or like, oh, I'm getting all these gains in my deadlift. Oh man, I'm back to zero again. And it's like, well, yeah, we just need to go to PT and get the ankle fixed before we work on deadlifts. Or, you know, and not to beat that metaphor too much, but like, then there's also all this stuff you could be doing to develop, which is like, you could get on the leg press machine that doesn't use your ankle at all, right? And you could still be working your quads, work your hammies and all this stuff. But because we don't tend to think of things as like, what intervention is right for here, like, we're having, and the good news is that a lot of the work we did, it all comes back in once we get the intervention we need. You know, it's not lost, but it can seem like, oh, cool, I had this state experience. Why can't I stabilize it? You know, and it's because we need to be aiming at what's actually in need. The other cool thing that speaks to me is a really neat aspect of that spiritual bypassing thing, which is not necessarily that what you were doing was bypassing. I kind of like that other metaphor myself personally, but one of the things that can happen is that we can reach these heights, but we're always basically limited by the lowest piece of developmental work that we have yet to do. Right. So we can, you know, you could have astral body and lucid dreams and stuff like that. And if you haven't learned to own your own projections, it's always going to be yanked back down by the work on owning your own projections. And it's a bummer, but then if we know that there's work for each of those, it can actually be really inspiring. Oh, yeah, not everyone needs the same medicine. And so, yeah, that's my kind of my slogan for this course is, you know, meditation is not one size fits all. It's not one size fits all. And by the end of the day, I'll give you all a few different book recommendations if you're into them, of just some of these different facets and what's in there. Okay. Anything else? Confirmations, talkbacks, feeling good? All right, cool. I don't think it's time for our big break yet. It's almost time though. Almost time though. Oh, hold on. How's my grounding circuitry? Let's do a short meditation practice, and then we'll take our 15-minute break. We'll take our actual big kid break. Sound okay? All right, cool. So our first practice is going to be, all the practices today are going to be practices of comfort and ease. And we are going to be learning to find comfort and ease in our bodies and through some body methods. So what I'd like to encourage, and every instruction is if it's comfortable for you. So if I don't say that every time, you should just hear that. If this is comfortable for you, then do this. By the end of the day, you'll have a bunch of different stuff that you can do, and you can always just pick the one you like the best. So if it's comfortable for you, we're going to do a little body tapping. And this is a great way, since I just sat and talked to you for nearly an hour, to just loosen back up. And you can tap in any old pattern that you want. And what I would like to suggest is that you use this Taoist practice called the inner smile as you tap your body. So you can even make a smile with your face if you want. But the sense is, like, as you tap a part, you may need to linger there for a minute. You want to just feel like you're sending good vibes to that part of your body. So I'm like, may my pec minor be happy and free of suffering. May my ribs be happy and free of suffering. So you're just vibing, good vibes into the bot. Feel free to pause at a place that might need more. Don't forget your back. And if your hands are tired or you're not in a spot to tap, then don't do this. Or you could inner smile without the tapping. That's just fine. I'm going to get my legs. And then, yeah, maybe do some little raindrop fingers on your face if you want to. Raindrops or fingers on my face. And then just take about 1 more minute for any kind of like self-massage that might feel good to you. So maybe you want more of that tapping. I'm feeling drawn to this kind of like, just like rub down. It's like, oh, give it a rub down. And just have this moment of expressing self-compassion. Ooh, last couple moments here. Maybe even take a stretch if you want to. Okay. And then we're going to start working on our meditation posture. And so the main point from Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, this 2,000-year-old, 2022-ish years old classic text of yoga, Patanjali says, what is asana? What is a meditation seat? It is something that is steady and easy. Shtiram sukham asanam. Asana is that which is steady and easy. So I'd like to encourage you to find a seat. I'm on like a little stool right now, and so my spine is very easily upright, but you have to balance steadiness and easiness. So here, I'm quite steady, but for you, if it's easier to have your back against a chair, that's okay. There probably are some meridians and stuff that are really neat if you sit straight up, but they're not so important that you'll lose all meditation if you lean on the back of your lazy boy. Okay, so get easy, comfy, sukham. Sukham means bliss in Sanskrit. And so make it nice. Your meditation posture should feel nice. And then if you can, You'll use these tools like my hips are a little higher than my knees, so I'm not using my ab muscles to hold me up. If you're on the floor, we can talk more about meditation seat a little later, but just see if you can find, oh, where am I steady? Where am I easy? For a little 5-minute practice that we're going to do. Okay, and let's do, if it works for you, let's do an EMDR technique called the butterfly hug. So you're going to make a little butterfly. And then you put that on your chest. This is also a self-compassion mudra. And then you're just going to tap one side and the other. And you can go at any pace you like. This is the pace that I like right now. And if you want, you could keep up that inner smile, or you could even add in any kind of affirmation that you enjoyed. And this is just one of these many evidence-based ways to use our physiology to begin calming the nervous system. Okay, so I'm feeling complete with that. You may want to continue on for a moment or let that come to a pause when you're ready. And we'll just leave those hands over the heart for a moment, if it works for you. And perhaps, like, I'm finding that to be a very enjoyable sensation myself, just to hold this particular mudra. So if it's enjoyable for you, I want to encourage you just to kind of savor that feeling of enjoyment or calm. And if not, maybe find a posture that is enjoyable for you, that does feel calm or soothing. Okay, then let's bring our hands down. And you can place them, I'm going to place my hands palm down on my thighs. If you have a little meditation hand position that you know works for you, feel free to use that. And take a moment in our steady and easy posture. Don't be shy to adjust if you need to get steady and easy. See if you can find any enjoyable feelings in your body. And I know for some of us that will be quite easy. For some of us, or some days, that might seem like the hardest task ever. Just find yourself where you are. And sometimes if that's difficult, you could even find a neutral sensation. Like in the sea of uncomfortable sensations, a neutral one can be quite blissful. So we want to find something in the body from the spectrum from neutral all the way to blissful. We'll just pause with that and enjoy for a moment. And then we'll add one more technique, which is the 2-1 ratio breath. This is a breathing technique that has been shown to shift your vagus nerve associated with the stress response down out of the stress response and into the relaxation response. So very simply, as you're sitting in your easy posture, you're going to make your exhales twice as long as your inhales. And we're going to do this not by blowing out more breath. That's a different type of method. But in this one, if I'm going to inhale for 3, and you can try it with me if you like. So I'll inhale. I'm going to slowly exhale for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Then I would inhale, 2, 3. And I would exhale 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'll count that one more time. Inhale, 2, 3. And exhale 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And now that you know the method, you can find a pace that works for you. So if it should be longer, you can do it longer. 4/8 works nice for some people. And if it's shorter, maybe make it shorter. You want this to be comfortable. This is not a intensity exercise. You want this to feel good. 2-1 ratio breathing. We'll do about another minute like this. Just counting the pace of the breath. And then when you're ready, just let the breath flow on its own. And notice any changes that have taken place in you over the course of this little mini practice session. Do you feel different now than when you started, do you think? Just take note. This is cultivating a bit of that non-judgmental mindfulness. We're not looking for anything particular. We're just noticing what's changed and how it is now. Then maybe with one more moment of that self-compassion, just dedicating this practice. May this practice bring me ease, bring me happiness, bring me comfort, or whatever other qualities you like. When you're ready, take a few deep breaths. Invite your mind to shift out of any deep states you may have traveled into and back toward the more conversational realm. If you like, you can take a little stretchy. All right. And then we'll just do questions or comments on that, and then we'll take a break. All right, we got our first session in, a mini meditation session. Pro tip, I'll tell you more of this later for your notes, but for beginners, I think all of our sessions should be mini. You get in enough to where you're like, ooh, that was good, I want more. And then you stop like a cliffhanger TV show. And you'll be sure to come back tomorrow. You're like, whoa, what might I experience next? All right. Can you meditate through the break? I don't know. Can you? I mean, you do you, man. Absolutely. All right, refreshing. Cool. So, any questions on that methodology? You'll have the recording. It may take me a few days, but I will also excerpt that out. So, that'll be one of your little sessions in the archive online. So, if you want to go back and, like, oh, yeah, guide me through that. But we did a tapping practice with a little Taoist practice on the inside called the inner smile. We did a second tapping practice, and this comes from EMDR. What is that? Eye movement desensitization and reprogramming, right? So quite well validated for working with trauma, but as well, this is just working with our mind, right? So you can use it, whether you feel particularly traumatized or not, you can just tap and it helps the mind do this little, oh, get out of the past, get out of my fantasies, get out of my future trip. We're just tapping right now, man. We're just tapping. So it's really nice for that. And we did a little self-compassion practice with that. And then we worked posture and the 2-to-1 ratio breath. Does anybody else like that one? I think that's one of the most groovy pranayamas ever. One of the most groovy ever. So we can talk more about those if we want to after the break, but it is now 11:38 Pacific time. So let's take 15 minutes, which then would be what? 48, 53. Let's come back at 54 after. Would you please? 54 after. And I'll see you then. We'll dive back in, a little more theory, a lot of more practice, and we'll have some fun. Baton. And I would like to invite you, before we start, let's do that 2-1 breathing together. And it's a great chance to review, but I'll let you know why. I listened to some podcast the other day. I don't remember what it was. And they actually recommended, because this is so well documented, to kind of just hack your vagus nerve, to be able to flip the switch, like, oh, stress response, relaxation response. They said, like, practice this at any time of transition, like before you start your workout and when you finish your workout, or before you start your work day, when you finish your work day, before a tough meeting, after a tough meeting. And it can be a way to start to acclimate your nervous system to being in a state of relaxation, or to do what our ancestors primally maybe had more opportunity to do, which was have stress and then to shake it off and to go about their business, rather than necessarily have to rewind and not be kind for the rest of the day. So I'd like to practice that, and it gives us a chance to review this practice in this moment of transition. So the breath pattern is out for twice as long as you breathe in. 3-6 is the one that's often recommended, because that's about the pace your breath wants to go anyway. But you can use a 4 and 8, 5 and a 10, a 2 and a 4, whatever you got. So let's just try a couple of these. You don't have to adopt any posture, but in for half the time and out for twice as long. Okay, and that's all you need. Just a couple rounds. What do you think? Does that, for me, I love this one because I can feel my awareness just kind of go jump. It's kind of cool. That may not be the tool for you, which is fine, because we'll explore a lot of tools. And if none of the tools in this class are the ones for you, there are a lot of different folks with toolboxes out there that you could patronize. That's the word for it. So yes, so the 2-1 breathing. And let's just get into a little bit of the theory of what we just did. We have an hour until lunch. And yes, that was the schedule. Lunchish break from 1 to 2:30. And then our afternoon session is just a half hour longer than our morning session, if I did my maths right. So all of these practices we did in our morning session are about generating a feeling of relaxation and a feeling of resource. And we'll get into what I mean by resource a bit more in a moment. You could say they are generating the relaxation response. That is a term that was developed by Dr. Herbert Benson quite a long time ago. So his work is a little outdated by now, but it still works. If you want to read the old book, The Relaxation Response, that was one of the first texts on what is now the bread and butter of the science of meditation. So, but our first task in, at least in this model, in this compassion alchemy model, is to be able to find resource and relaxation, is to be able to find resource and relaxation. And so that's what all of these practices were about. And I noticed myself, I was just going to jump into teaching, but let's ask for a little feedback and interaction first. This is my developmental task. I'm going back and training myself in, is how to not live in a bubble, but actually develop healthy human relationships. So how was that practice for you? Would you be willing to share something that you noticed, found interesting, had a question about before we go any further? How was that? And you can type in the chat box, or feel free to just bring yourself on and say something as a person if you don't want to be a robot, whichever suits you the best. I like to be a robot some days. What do you say, Mike, and then Jim?
I'll go for actually talking. Yeah, I always enjoy the technique. Definitely the deeper mental states are a wonderful place to spend some time. So, and hence my kind of joking comment about meditating through the break. So thank you.
Yeah, beautiful. And I think it really kind of encompasses it, that like our meditation is kind of a break. It's a little inner spa that, there are meditations later where you can work and you're like, oh, deconstruct your concepts. But today's meditations should all be a spa. They should be a pause that refreshes. And so, yeah, I love that. Meditate through the break, have your break as a meditation. As I'm doing a coffee meditation, delicious. Otherwise, my nervous system might get so calm that I couldn't teach. So I have to, that goes in the book of BS that gurus say. Okay, so thanks, Mike. Jim, did you have something, or were you just being a robot? I saw your hand go up, but then I realized.
I was being a robot. The 2-to-1 I use almost every day. I teach it. I use it with my clients. I use it when I teach Qigong, yoga class. It's a staple.
Yeah.
It really, every time I've been prepping for this class for about 3 weeks now, and boom, it's my main go-to to drop.
Yeah.
And then you can go from there.
Yep.
Wherever. Yeah. So
beautiful.
I love it. Yeah. My
So
clients
good.
love it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a tool like, this may still be my vision, but when I first went to massage school long ago, I had this thought that everyone needs massage school anatomy and physiology class, like just as like an owner's manual to the human body. And this is now the updated version. This I would put in there is like, dude, there's a dial that turns down your stress response. Like you have control of that dial. Like, but nobody knows. How do we not know this? Come on. So hence a free meditation immersion. So now you are all ambassadors of 2-1 breathing. Janelle, I saw your hand. What do you say?
So I've been using 2-1 breathing for a long time, since you first taught it in the first class that you ever taught it in that I was in. And I utilize it for myself and for my students and my clients as well. But until you had said it the way that you had said it just now, I usually use it as as a like a fix it tool
Mm-hmm.
when challenges come up, and but using it as a transitional tool, that placed it somewhere differently in my mind as a tool to use, that in practice we can just start with that.
Yeah,
And as you were saying that, I was like, whoa, we can start with that.
that's cool.
Instead of like waiting for the need to arise to need the thing, just do it first. Like, that was pretty amazing. So I'm going to immediately incorporate that into my practice for myself and others.
Wow. I love it. That's pretty neat. Yeah, I'm excited about, because I heard this podcast, and slightly different from the insight that you got. What I got was like, oh, you could use it as a nervous system training tool, right? So, and they were talking, I think this was one of these bro podcasts that I listened to, and they were talking about like, well, when you work out, you have to bring yourself fully, and it's very stressful, because you gotta like put it all on the mat. But then after that, you need to de-escalate, bro. How are you going to do that? And I was like, oh, that makes sense, bro. Okay. And so you can't just slam your whey protein and go about your business. You might need to take a couple breaths. So yeah. So so that's what I'm working on doing right now, is integrating it as like at those moments of transition to train the nervous system. This is so less from the kind of stuff I looked up from my evidence-based secular class, but one from my Lama talks about in the yogic schools. They say these moments of transition are the best times to train your mind in adopting patterns. So they'll do things like, they'll put little signs above your door so that every time you walk through the doorway, you do a mental training or something like that. And so similarly, if you can put something at the beginning of your workout or at the end of your workday, and just get it in at a couple of those moments, you'll be training the actual sort of vagus nerve architecture in how to ramp up and then ramp back down. Because the whole notion is that we're not going to be free of stress in life. And it's also like, that's not the point, is to try to be free of stress. It's the point of being able to ride those waves in an integrative and healthy way. So I love that, Janelle. I am excited to see what comes of this. Broga, yeah. Yoga for bros, dude. Okay, let me read from the chat box. I love how the practice deepens for me with every round. By the end, I notice that I'm still counting 4-8, but the count takes longer. Yeah, and the breath slows down. That's nice. Such a great one for my patients when they come in frazzled. It brings them calm before we even start our treatment. Yes, my acupuncturist used to have a love-hate relationship with me. I was once ordered to stop doing my Qigong practice close to our acupuncture sessions, because she would take my pulse and all the meridians would be balanced, and she couldn't tell where the problem was, because I had some problems. I was going for a reason. Multiple reasons to get acupuncture, but when I did my practice, it cleared the decks, and so she couldn't get an accurate read. I got in trouble for that. But similarly, the bright side of that funny story is that if our clients, if we're in healing professions, if they have the tools to help regulate themselves, then they can take that much more advantage of their practitioner. Right. And I think that's maybe what you were saying too, Jim, is like, if you can help people get a baseline nervous system regulation, then they can actually start to do some of the work instead of just getting the symptom again, because the practitioner is the only secure attachment object who can do that from the outside. This is in this aspect of training. We're developing a secure attachment figure in here who longs for your happiness and has the tools to accomplish it. So pretty fun. Okay, well, that's 2-1 breathing. What about, did anybody like the butterfly hug? That's one of my latest ones. I actually like this one a lot. I make the people in my church do it in church service. We do, instead of opening prayer, because it's a Unitarian Universalist church, so not everybody prays, right? I make them do butterfly hug and self-compassion mudra, and it's a crowd pleaser. It's a real, because it's a real legit anti-anxiety practice. It works. So what do you think? Do you like butterfly hugs? Okay, cool. Janelle, something to add? Is that a hand raise? Yeah.
I have a quick question about the butterfly hug. Is it weird if it kind of makes you more anxious at first?
Well, that might be that, excuse me, an aspect of that relaxation-induced anxiety could be, and I'm not a trauma therapist, so I'm not an EMDR therapist, so they might have, somebody who specializes in that might have a better answer for you, but from my field that I know, might be that, might also be that the self-compassion aspect is a little tricky for some of us. So that can come up for some of us when we try to do inner smile, when we try to do some of these self-soothing, the disconnect between where our conditioning has said, like, you're not supposed to love yourself. That's a bad idea. You're going to get in trouble. When we start to love ourselves, the nervous system goes like, be-doo, be-doo, we're going to get in trouble. So that's one that I've seen and is kind of in the literature. And then occasionally, some techniques just don't work the same way for some of us, like, which it's just like for me, it's mantra yoga. This is, okay, secretly one of the big inspirations for this class is that, like, I was having once upon a time in my life, I was having this great time doing all these Taoist practices and advancing, doing all these Buddhist practices and advancing. And then the Buddhists were like, and then to really advance, you do this mantra yoga thing. And I tried it and it totally messed me up. It did not advance me. I got worse at life. And then they were like, oh, well, maybe you have this psychological work to do. And so I went and I did the psychological work. I did this other stuff. I tried some mantras again. Wrong choice. And so there's other things to check out, but it may be that for me, that particular yoga, for 80% of the people, it's like, yeah, you're going to advance so quickly. And for me, it's like, you're going to go backward. So just different tools were that also we got to say is, that, but if it's like anxious for a second and then you're like, oh no, this is cool, then probably worth it. But some of them, this is, I guess we'll say now in our intro to meditation course today, some tools you do them and then it doesn't switch like that. It's just kind of always anxiety provoking. Just throw them out, man. Like, they're just like, just don't do that tool. Right. Yeah. And then Zoe's doing the self hug, right? Really nice. The self-compassion mudra, this one and self hug have been sort of tried out by trauma therapists equally, and they both have kind of the same amount of evidence that they're good for a person. So if the tapping isn't any fun, but these are, they're doing similar things, so you can play with them. And that's the idea of this secular meditation system in development, is if you know what the I'm trying to think of the word in martial arts training, they call it the attribute, right? If you know what the attribute is you're going for, then there are 5 different techniques you could do to get that attribute, right? So like if you were trying to develop strength, let's say, you could go to CrossFit, which does not work for me personally. Ain't going. Nope. But you could go to like a slow flow strength yoga, and maybe that works for you. Or for some people, they're like, it works, but it's not giving me. And then, oh, you're going to go and you're just going to do a lifting protocol, So each of us, you could get strength through various different techniques. And similarly, we're just trying to get nervous system reset, self-compassion, and self-soothing. And so you could sub in any technique. And that's the beauty of it, is we're not just stuck on, oh, man, I don't feel comfortable with visualizing that white guy with 4 arms who loves me. And then in a religious context, you go like, yeah, but that's the deity. You're going to have to like white guys with 4 arms who love you. And no, it's here. It's like, we could go like, well, there's a green lady with 2 arms who loves you. How do you feel about her? I'm like, oh, green ladies are cool. Or you don't have to visualize anything at all. Just, feel love. So if you get the attribute, you can pick your techniques. Okay. What would you recommend to ease relaxation response? Yeah, so the relaxation induced anxiety. Well, unfortunately, that's outside of my scope of practice. There you would want to get, so meditation will do a lot of the work of trauma therapy in a light way, but it's not a replacement, right? So that's where I would go, oh, we're gonna need to go do some trauma work probably in a one-on-one context and with very specific interventions for that. So yeah. And the same thing, the chronic fight or flight hypervigilance. This is where, like for you as a teacher, as a yoga teacher and a qigong teacher, this is where I think also in this new era, we need to learn to be allied health practitioners, not new age superheroes. Who go, oh, yoga, it heals everything. It's like, maybe, for 1% of the time, it might heal everything. But in general, come to yoga and here. I got 3 different trauma therapists. Here's somatic experience. Oh, you don't like somatic experiencing? Here's the other one. Here's Hakomi. Like, head on over there, and then our yoga can really shine. So yeah, and not likely to go to therapy. That's where I would have some people do groups for somatic experiencing, things like that, that are less intimidating. Some folks, this is a little deeper than today's convo, so I won't go too deep, but some folks, if their situation is not too acute, they could get away with like just learning to go get a massage and like calm down, right? But again, it's a bit outside of our scope of practice to attempt to assess that. We want to think of ourselves more as an ally who can offer some resources, because it gets really complicated and frankly dangerous. So the main goal for it, because there are some teachers in the room, and I want you to take anything that I've researched that's of value to you. I think the main goal for us as teachers is to be trauma informed, so that if it comes up in our classroom, we're not confused as to what's happening, right? We know, oh, and the best thing, the magic mantra you can say to your students is, oh, that's normal. Because the worst thing that can happen is you relax, you get more anxious, and then you get anxious about the fact that you did spirituality wrong, right? And worse than that is some spiritual schools will shame you for that, or tell you, one of the reasons for this class is that some schools of spirituality will tell you then to go sit on it more. And that can actually lead to really intense psychological destabilization. And it's problematic. And if the meditation teacher is a bit complicit in that, unfortunately. And so we want to be, oh, wow, meditation's making you anxious. So the first thing we might do is, why don't you try the yoga nidra instead? As I guide them through this, you're going to relax. Oh, that didn't work. Maybe this practice isn't right for you right now without this and that. Maybe this would be better. And then we can really help people. But the magic words are, oh yeah, that's totally normal. A lot of people relax and freak out. I mean, have you seen planet Earth right now? Like, let your guard down a little bit. You might freak out. Okay. So back to today, then, what we're doing with our earth element is, when the world looks crazy out there, we're developing an inner earth, an inner solid ground from which we can relate to it. And so as we develop a meditation practice, that's what you're developing. It's going back, it's in your nervous system, you have solidity, or in your emotional body, you have solidity. And in each meditation session with some of these tools, they are this almost instantaneous way to ratchet down out of distress and back into a relaxation response, so that we can bring that relaxation, that stability, that secure attachment to the stressful events that we might see in our life or in our world. So that's what we're working on. How exciting. Thank you all for those comments and questions, and we will have more time for that as we go. But let's see, where are we in our process? Yes, so we already introduced it, but just to let you know, the idea that we're working with, and then we'll do another practice in a sec here. The idea we're working with is, in Buddhism, they call it refuge. In somatic experiencing, which I've studied a little bit, they call it resourcing. And what I'd like to propose to you is that those two are really getting at the same attribute. That's the word I'll use today. And they're helping with the same developmental task. So that sense, earlier we said as like secure attachment as a little baby, ideally we want that. If you didn't get enough of it or the right kind, you can earn it later. That's the good news. And one of the ways that we're going to earn that is by finding secure attachment figures or creating that sense of relaxation, openness, solidity, and care within. It's really cool because what you're doing in meditation is you're creating an unconditionally loving presence. Ultimately, what all of meditation does is it helps one to create an unconditionally loving presence. And the good news about that is that that is the best secure attachment figure you can find. So how we're doing that in the earth element is that we are going to focus on things that are neutral, pleasurable, or stabilizing. We're going to focus on things that are neutral, pleasurable, or stabilizing. And what this will do is help the mind to begin to settle down and create this kind of inner sense of stability or support. And we're going to develop what one of my teachers called like a well of resource, a well of resource. So if you're taking notes, by all means, you don't have to, you can just chill if you want. But these are a few of the concepts that I want to offer you as you develop your practice. In Taoism, I'll put this in the chat box because it helps me to highlight things. In Taoism, they call this phase of practice building the foundation, building the foundation. And it's before you go and you try to do any other advanced stuff, they say you always build the foundation. That might involve dietary interventions, that might involve what they call intercepting karma. You're cleaning up your life, right? In Buddhist practice, there's a lot of different words in the different schools, but basically we'll call this stage finding refuge or taking refuge. In Buddhist religion, taking refuge has a very specific religious meaning, right? It means I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha until I attain enlightenment through the virtues of giving and so forth that I do. May all beings accomplish the pure land, or something along those lines, depending on your school. What I want to offer you for this secular meditation practice is that regardless of what may be going on metaphysically, which I couldn't convey if I knew, you'd have to experience it on your own. That's how metaphysics works. But what we can know of on kind of this shared evidence-based reality is the purpose that serves is it gives you, when you're visualizing these Buddhas, or when you're saying, oh, I'm part of this spiritual lineage, is it gives you that sense that you're in a supportive community with supportive and loving figures working for your benefit. Does that kind of make sense? How valuable that might be, right? So I'm using Buddhist language, but you can see how for a Christian contemplative, the same thing is true. They're not just going into retreat as a nihilist and trying to deconstruct their reality further. You might be able to survive that. I didn't, but or my ego didn't, obviously. I guess I'm still here. So they're going in and they have this feeling that like Christ loves you and we're part of this lineage of spiritual practitioners. And then you go in and question everything that you know. So this first task of building the foundation is really quite important. The second just quick concept I want to introduce before we practice is, so building the foundation, refuge, and the other keyword is resource. The other keyword is resource. And I do really like Peter Levine's work. He's the person who developed what's called somatic experiencing. And obviously people have criticism of every system. I don't know enough about the system to defend against all those criticisms, but I like the resourcing personally. I find it works really well, and his way of describing it works really well. So in resourcing, we are going to find things that feel positive, nourishing, or even neutral. And we're going to use that as like a source of spiritual or mental, emotional nourishment. So you can kind of see how this and the refuge thing go together. And there's this feeling that you can have an inner well of this resource that then when times are stressful, you can bring yourself back to. So that's what we'll be developing. The last thing to just say in this little mini theory portion is that for our purposes, I'm going to define meditation as the art of directing attention. The art of directing attention. And going back to our little exercise we did this morning, what is meditation? Well, everything that, as far as I remember, everything that we put in the list was one style of directing your attention. You're directing your attention to the present moment. You're directing your attention to openness and accepting whatever's there. So meditation, for the definition that I'll use, is the art of directing one's attention. And what we're going to be doing in this phase, this earth element phase, is we are going to be directing our attention to things that are nourishing, pleasurable, neutral, or stabilizing, right? So we're going to be using, this is this thing that's built into your mind. Sometimes the muscle isn't very well developed, or sometimes the way stimuli grab us make it feel like we don't have the capacity to direct our attention, but there's always some capacity in there to direct one's attention. And so we're going to learn to use that to direct the attention toward what is nourishing, stabilizing, pleasurable, or even neutral, because neutral can be quite pleasant in some cases. And that's a great answer also to that. A relative of that relaxation-induced anxiety. This is when your yoga teacher says, like, focus on love and happiness. And you're just such a grumpy misanthrope that day that you can't find any love and happiness. Am I the only one who ever experienced that? Okay. Okay, good. Anyway, then it's the most annoying thing in the world to be in that yoga class that day, because you're like, I can't do it. And then you're like, oh crap, I might not even be a spiritual person. And instead of bringing resource, it brings you more tension. If you just knew that, like, okay, if compassion ain't your jam right now, find a piece of the floor that your eyes don't mind resting on. And it's a beautiful technique. Like, it calms the mind. Let's try it right now before we do our next method. So just a quick little pattern interrupt. Let your eyes wander around whatever direction they're facing in, and see if there's a spot that they want to land on. It might be interesting to you, or it might just be neutral, but just someplace that your eyes want to land. And they might want to stay there for a long time, or they might want to move again quite quickly. You can do whichever one is that. So if they want to move, then you move and you find your next spot whenever that comes. And it's spots that are pleasant or interesting or neutral. We can maybe do that one or some more times, depending on your pace. Just letting your eyes wander. And if they find a spot they like, letting them rest. Okay. And then letting that go gently. Just a little 1-ish minute intervention. And we'll get ready for our next practice session. How did that feel? Did that feel relaxing a little bit? Right? And it's just like, let your eyes wander and find something boring to look at. Like that was my case, at least. Like there was this little piece of paint lump on the wall and my eyes were like, yeah, paint lump. Ah. And it's just like the boring neutrality of the present moment can be so refreshing. That's actually the whole path of Zen, as it was described to me, finding the refreshingness of the boring neutrality of the present moment. So orienting technique. So just a little quickie. All right. So what we are on to next is we are going to do a little yoga nidra. Now, I won't give you the long spiel about yoga nidra. I'm not a certified like yoga nidra instructor. There are a few schools of that. But so you could call what we're doing progressive relaxation. In the olden days, they used to call it autogenic training, which was where you're using like affirmations. My forehead is relaxed, auto, self, genic, like you're creating a state by your own sort of volition, right? Whatever you want to call it. I tend to use yoga nidra nowadays because one of my teachers has us going through the curriculum from Richard Miller, which is the I Rest Yoga Nidra. And I highly recommend, if you like this style of practice, to look up Richard Miller. And because I've been studying his work for the last year, I've taken a few ideas for this course because he's also got a lot of the kind of evidence-based approach. And so some of the ways he works with the resourcing aspect, some of the ways he works with some of the different things that we'll play with today and over the next few months are a great little booster. So, but yoga nidra literally means yogic sleep, and it's both a state and a technique. Ultimately, the state of the yoga nidra is the same as like Zen meditation. Your ego goes night-night, your body goes into repose, and then just basic lucidity remains, not having to do anything. It can be quite restful. We're going to do the baby steps, which are the techniques by which one might get to that. And the main one that we're going to utilize is progressive relaxation. So there are a lot of tools in the toolbox of progressive relaxation. We may do some of them later today. Some of them involve things like tensing your muscles and relaxing them. This is really good if you don't know what relaxation feels like. So I'm just going to guide you through the progressive relaxation with a little visualization. And if I'm saying, oh, relax your forehead muscles. And if you go, dude, I don't know how to do that. I don't know what that means. One of the techniques you can go to is you could tap there. And if that feels nice, you could go, oh yeah, that feels nice. That's relaxation of your forehead muscles. Or another technique is you could try to tense them somehow. And then usually they'll inhale on that. And then as you exhale, you drop all tension. And you go, oh, that's what a relaxed forehead feels like. So if you were to study yoga nidra in some of the various schools, you'll see all of these different techniques. Some of them they'll stretch, or they'll try to induce feelings of heaviness in different parts of the body, things like that. We're going to do the most basic, which is a guided visualization practice, progressively relaxing through the body. So your posture, you have two options, maybe three. First option is if you have a spot on your floor, lay yourself out on the floor, put a cushion under your knees if that's comfortable for you, put a pillow under your head if you want, get any degree of yoga proppies that you like, or on your bed if the floor is too hard, whatever you want. That's actually the ideal proposition, unless you're really, really sleepy, because then you'll just pass out immediately. The second version is the lazy boy meditation. Let me demonstrate it for you. Can you see me? Oh. Oh. Yeah, that's lazy boy yoga nidra in the recliner. And the reason for that is in these meditations, you want to let your body go as much as possible. And so sometimes if you are sitting up, because you can do this, this is actually in advanced Zen, they're doing the same thing, but they're sitting in a lotus position. But for most of us, if you're sitting up, then your body's going like, wait, do I use my muscles to hold myself upright, or do I relax completely and like give myself back pain from slumping? So I don't want you to have back pain from slumping. So ideally on the floor or in a recliner. But if you want to sit upright, then just know that you're going to try to put yourself in repose. So you have to use as little muscularity to hold yourself there as possible. And then just don't let yourself slump. Just come on back, and it'll be a slightly different experience than the laying down experience, but still a very valid one. So hopefully that made sense. If not, put a question in the chat box, and we'll take a 1.5 minute period to find your place and also run off and go to the bathroom or get a drink if you need to. All righty, probably about a 1/2 minute more before we get started. And then when you're ready, find yourself in your meditation pose. And for today, because it's all about being relaxed and at ease, if you need to move or shift your position during the meditation, that's no problem, especially because you're on mute, so no one will hear you wrestling. So that's really nice. But as you advance in this Yoga Nidra type meditation, they say you want to set yourself up. So if possible, for the whole 20 minutes, you wouldn't move at all. So just to reiterate for today, if you need to move in your position while we're doing the thing, feel free. But if you can, try to set yourself up so that you wouldn't have to, just in case you start to hit those advanced states where you go into deep stillness. You want your body to be well taken care of. All right, so we're finding ourselves, we got cushions, maybe you have a blankie if it was cool, because your temperature often drops during this type of practice. And then where you are on the floor, see if, or on the floor or in the chair or whatever, I'll be sitting up for this one so I can stay alert and teach it. See if there's any way you want to move or wiggle your body or stretch just without shifting out of your position, but maybe your shoulders want to go up towards your ears and down, or maybe you want to look left and right, or kind of reach out with your toes or with your hands or something. Taking a moment to give the body some enjoyable wiggles or stretches. And of course, that means we also have the option of, if it's not enjoyable to wiggle or stretch, you have enjoyably not doing that. Whatever makes you happy. Ooh. And then when you're ready, you can let that settle down. Find your resting position of repose. And let's try a couple rounds of that 2-1 breathing. I'll practice what I preach. We'll do this as our transition exercise. So it's an inhale of whatever length and an exhale that's about twice as long. Okay. So for this practice, I'm going to guide you through a visualization. And as usual, if some elements of it don't quite work for you, feel free to change them to something that does work for you. But the basic visualization is like this. You're going to imagine that a beautiful sphere of golden light appears above your head. Maybe it comes up out of the earth or down from the sky, or just you're imagining it so it can just appear there. But imagine this sphere of golden light is filled with and radiating, relaxing and nourishing type of energy and sensations. Make the color of it the most relaxing and soothing color of golden light that you can think of. And then as you're ready, you're going to imagine that this golden ball comes down and it begins to touch the crown part of your head, very top of your head, and feel that wherever this golden light touches, all of those tissues begin to relax and release. Your scalp begins to release, and maybe even the bones of your skull feel like they can just set down. Then this golden ball continues to descend. And it comes down now to the level of your eyebrows and the same level on the back of the head. And you'll start to feel that some of the muscles of the forehead and even the sides of the head and the back of the head all become very relaxed. And maybe even the brain relaxes. I know it's not really a muscle, but it can feel sometimes like, oh, we can just relax that big brain muscle. And then continuing down so that this gentle golden light relaxes the eyebrows and the eyes, the temples, and even your ears. And starting to release the big muscles that attach onto your skull. And coming down, relaxing the nose, even the roof of the mouth. And then even the base of the skull, those little suboccipital muscles deep inside, all being gently relaxed. Let this golden light continue down and fill up your jaw. Relax your tongue and the muscles on the bottom of your jaw and mouth. Until you feel like the whole head is being gently relaxed. And if there's some tension that lingers, that's okay. Just know that it'll continue to slowly melt in its own time. We let this golden light continue now down through the neck and the throat, like a sphere of golden light that's gently hovering through this area of your neck and your throat. It relaxes the big trapezius muscles back there and the little muscles on your spine. And the voice box muscles in your throat and the swallowing muscles in the throat. Even the esophagus relaxes. And let this golden light come all the way down, and it sort of grows and divides. So everything is bathed in golden light from the head all the way down. And let this golden light sort of divide and grow into two that fill up your two shoulders, these big trapezius muscle shoulders and collarbones. And even grow into the shoulder joints. Relaxing the big muscles of the deltoids and the little rotator cuff muscles. Like they're being bathed in this nourishing light, restored and released. And continuing down now through the two arms. Whole upper arm being released and relaxed all the way to your elbow. And then continuing down even into the forearms. From the elbow through the big meaty part of the forearm. Through the middle of the forearm and down all the way to the wrist. And then even the hand is filled with this golden light, and the fingers. Feel as if all the way from the crown of the head down to your fingers has been bathed in this golden light. Let that process of relaxation continue as you come back up to where the neck meets the shoulders. And we let this golden light flow down now and fill the upper part of the torso, the chest, and the upper back. We can feel the big pec muscles and the big back muscles and shoulder blades all relaxing. And then even inward to the rib cage and into the lungs begins to be relaxed and nourished. Continuing downward even further, the sternum relaxes and your upper spine relaxes, and even the heart begins to relax. The lower rib cage relaxing, the mid back relaxing, and even your diaphragm, the big breathing muscle in the middle of the body, relaxes. Feeling as if this ball or wave of golden light now begins to enter the abdomen. And it's bringing ease to the abdominal organs and starting to relax your ab muscles. And as well, it's entering into your lower back, and it's nourishing that lower spine, releasing your lower back muscles. Filling the body with a beautiful healing light. Let that light continue down into your pelvis. And feel it heal, release, and restore your sacrum, all the way down to the muscles of your pelvic floor, all the organs of your pelvis. And feeling as if the whole upper body, from your crown all the way through the arms and the torso and down to your pelvis, filled with a healing light that allows tension to release, allows nourishment and restoration to take place. Then, like before at the shoulders, this golden light or golden ball grows outward into two and it fills your hips, filling the big glute muscles and back, and even into the little hip joint deep within, filling the entirety of your hips with this golden healing light and allowing for relaxation and restoration. Then flowing down through the upper thigh, letting all the muscles of the thighs begin to release, and even into the bones. Through your mid-thigh, through the lower thigh, and even into your knees. And feel as if a beautiful healing light is filling up and restoring your knees. Gentle light of restoration. And continuing into the lower leg, starting at the top of the shin and the calf, and just feeling that relaxation is being brought into these tissues. Moving down now through the mid part of the leg, and even to the lower part of the lower leg, and into your ankle, into your heel, into the whole foot, and into the toes. Feel the entire lower extremity from the hip to the toes completely released and relaxed. And if it works for you, if you enjoy this visualization, you could imagine that the toes become so relaxed that, like a little meridian or chakra at the tips of the toes, opens up and it lets tension drain out and flow down into the earth like a compost, letting go of what you don't need as a form of nourishment down into the earth. And feeling your entire body, crown, the head, the arms, torso, pelvis, the lower extremity, all filled with a healing light, deeply relaxing. And then add and savor any pleasant sense of heaviness in your body. Feeling how gravity is holding you to whatever surface you're reclining on. And if you've ever had the experience of being just deliciously tired and getting to go to sleep or take a nap, there's a sort of bliss that can happen. See if while staying conscious and lucid, you can enjoy that sense of heaviness as the body comes into total rest and relaxation. And then staying in that mode of savoring, begin to very slowly and gradually transition. And we'll do that by, while in this state of deep relaxation, calling to mind a dedication like we used in our last practice, something like, may I have happiness. May this meditation contribute toward my health, compassion, and growth. Whatever type of dedication makes sense for you. And as that comes online for you, feel or imagine that it invokes a type of inspiration, a type of new vitality. And as you begin to gently deepen your in-breaths, imagine that this new vitality is coursing through your body. It's been so relaxed and made spacious that now something new can come alive. Have a sense that your body is filled with beautiful vitality and inspiration, even if that's just something that you're imagining today, no problem. And then slowly invite your mind to bring this sense of relaxation with you as you gradually move up out of any deep, deep states and back toward conscious interactive states. When you feel ready, that living energy might reach your toes or your fingers. Parts of you might start to move just a little bit. And you can let that happen gradually, or like me, some days you may just need to stretch. Oh. And in your own time, we'll take a few stretchy breaths. You might even try your 2-1 breathing again in the transition. And let's take a few moments to make our way back to interpersonal engagement. Let's take an official 2-minute break, just in case you need to use the restroom. We're going to go on a longer break, not too long from now, but just so you don't hurry back. Make sure you keep this ease and relaxation. And then in 2 minutes, we will come and just do a quick debrief before lunch. All right. Have we returned from our yogic sleepathon? Ah. Yogic sleepathon. All right, just a quick debrief before we go to lunch. How was that for you? Any distress that needs soothing, or any questions or positive comments you want to share in the group? Anything at all? Yeah, totally relaxing. I felt quite relaxed myself, and I was even sitting up. So must be a good technique, I think. What else? Any quick questions or comments? I saw a snooze emoji from somebody. Yeah, yeah, quite wonderful. What do you think? Relaxing? Relaxing. So there are a lot of methods. I first learned how to do this back when I was, in Wiccan priest school long 1,000 years ago, the golden ball method for this. So that's what I still use. But there are a lot of different ways of doing this type of yoga nidra, or progressive relaxation. And my encouragement, I mean, obviously you could just take the recording I'm gonna make about this and use that forever if it works for you, but you could also go and just look around, use the iRest. What's this one in the box? Swami Jnaneshwari Bharati, who I don't know, but that's another method that just was in my chat box. And who else? What's her name? Desai, Kamini Desai, has a little app, which I used for a while. One of them, I still do one of their school's meditations for Yoga Nidra on the various points. They have like this Marma point meditation that they do. Ooh, I like it so much. So, but if we know the attribute, which is progressive relaxation, then you can use whatever gets you there, right? So is it tense your muscles and relax? Is it a golden ball? Like maybe you need a sound bath. And if that's what works for you, hook up the surround sound and like get it, because what you're going for is that sense of relaxation. And so you use whatever means are going to get you there. When we come back, we'll talk about one aspect of this is that for some of us, you may need to be using some CBD to get you there. You may need to be making sure you take your antipsychotic medications to get you there. All of those are also part of the corpus of a holistic practice of meditation. Some of our nervous systems don't know how to calm down on their own. We lack enough glutamate or whatever it takes to make GABA to make your anterior cingulate gyrus work to relax you. So that's also a part of it. But once we know the attribute that we're going for, we can create a recipe that helps to get us that attribute. So this is one of our foundation methods. And we'll talk about a lot of the reasons why. One that I'll give you now is because we started with a sitting meditation and a postural thing. I also wanted to give you the one where you can do it lying down. That could be your whole life's meditation, is laying down and chilling out meditation. What do we got? DHA? Yeah, the omega-3s. Like sometimes your brain needs the right kind of fats to be able to relax, or your body needs anti-inflammatory. Oh, we got a whole medicine cabinet here. Yeah. So we find, and we'll do more of that after lunch too. Okay, one more. Ashwagandha. Yeah, I hear Tulsi and ashwagandha are really nice. One of my teachers, from some past experience of theirs, they don't like anything that's associated with the cannabis plant. And so they showed us evidence one day. They're like, you don't need CBD. Tulsi and ashwagandha does the same thing. It's got more research. Whatever, I'm more of whatever works for you kind of guy these days. But yeah, ashwagandha is a real nice one. So you have a lying down meditation now, and this is a real life classical path of meditation. So we'll, again, more after the break because we're about to be in overtime. But one of my first goals when I decided I wanted to teach meditation, that would be an offering that I could give the world, I wanted to teach people about the two biggest obstacles. One, they think they have to sit cross-legged on the floor. Two, they think they have to make all their thoughts stop. And then 3, the other obstacle is usually they think they have to like chant Om or bow at an altar or something like that. And none of those are necessary for really good, top-notch meditation, right? So I imagine that if we could just dispel those myths, if we could just put out there, hey, you could lie down and think about things, and that's meditation, we could have so many more people getting access to calm on a regular basis. And I think the world would be a better place. Our lives would be, at least. So yeah. Okay. So it's lunchtime. Hey, how nice. We're going to take, it's 1:03. So let's come back at 2:33. And when we come back, we'll do some review of some practices we did this morning, and then we'll put in some other ones. We'll go a little deeper. So try not to do a quad espresso shot right before class, or it won't work as well, because we're going to go a little deeper. As well, in case you haven't done a meditation retreat before, try to eat, if you're going to eat, in the first half of lunch. And if you're not used to fasting, I would say do eat. Otherwise, you can become a space cadet in a way that's uncomfortable. But you don't want to have a heavy tummy and then try to come and sit and meditate, because it makes you very sleepy, and that's frustrating. And today, everything is supposed to feel good. It's not supposed to be frustrating. So yeah, so if you're going to eat at the beginning, make it kind of lightish, but whatever nourishes you. And we'll come back at 2:35 now. And see you then. Or if some of you have to pop off, see you when we see you. Bye.